Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2022 Key Biscayne Independent Mayoral Debate. My name is Tom Mazloum, and I will be your moderator this evening. First things first, we recognize that this evening begins Yom Kippur. Because of that, we will do our very best to wrap up in about 45 minutes. Unfortunately, scheduling did not allow for an earlier date, and additionally, ballots were mailed out yesterday, so they will be arriving today. We felt it was important to bring you this information before you vote. For our friends who could not make it tonight, the debate is also being streamed live, so they could watch it at home. It's also being recorded so they could watch it at a later date. So please give a warm round of applause for our sponsors, without whom tonight wouldn't be possible. That is the Key Biscayne Community Foundation and the Key Biscayne Chambers of Commerce. To ask questions tonight, we've assembled a panel of highly experienced journalists. Tony Winton is a 30-year veteran of the Associated Press and currently is the editor-in-chief of the Key Biscayne Independent. Emily Cardenas is your center square this evening in the middle. She is a former news producer for television. She is currently serving as the executive editor of the Biscayne Times. And Tess Risky on the end here is the local government reporter for the Miami Herald. Our video director is Theo Miller. He is a Mast Academy graduate, a FSU All-Star, and a stringer for the Independent. Our timekeeper and the most powerful woman in the room is Sydney Vigil. She's a staff member at the M Network. She's going to control everything. So, all of these questions will be asked to the candidates for Key Biscayne Mayor, who have been made aware of the rules previously. And with that, feel free to applaud for your candidate as I bring them up. Candidate Joe Rasco. And candidate Fausto Gomez. Points deducted for tardiness, Mr. Gomez.
I'm here on time.
In lieu of the coin flip, we did that ahead of time. Candidate Rasco will be answering questions first. Candidate Gomez will be answering questions second. And that brings us to the opening remarks. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement, starting with you, Candidate Rasco.
Thank you. Joe Rasco, for our neighbors observing Yom Kippur, we wish you an easy fast. I'm running for mayor of the village of Key Biscayne because I love this island. I've been here for 44 years. I married my lovely wife, Anna, 44 years ago, and together we raised 3 amazing children here on Key Biscayne. I now have 6 grandchildren, and 2 of those grandchildren live here on the island. We are at a major crossroads. We have infrastructure projects that we must take care of. And among them are the redesign of the Rickenbacker Causeway and the rebuilding of the Bearcut Bridge, very important. We have resiliency and environmental projects. And third, we have to enhance our quality of life. Solving these issues will be costly, but I have a proven track record of delivering transformative capital projects on this island without increasing taxes. Key Biscayne deserves a trusted leader to guide us into the future, and that's why I'm asking you for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Candidate Gomez.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening, Key Biscayne. I would first ask for a moment of silence for the over 100 of our fellow citizens who've lost their lives because of Hurricane Ian, and for the destruction to our greater neighbors in the state of Florida. Let's please bow our heads. Thank you. I would also like to apologize to our Jewish neighbors for holding this event on one of the most one of the holiest nights of their faith. I recommend that this debate be over by 6:45 so that our Jewish neighbors can observe in peace. In order for us to maximize our time, and in order for us to be able to answer the important questions that the panel has, I will forego an opening statement. I look forward to responding to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. As our thoughts are undoubtedly with our friends and neighbors on the west coast of Florida dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, I think it's appropriate to begin tonight with questions regarding hurricane preparedness. Asking candidate Rasco a question on hurricane preparedness is Tony Winton.
Thank you. Hurricane Ian is in front of mind for residents across the state. A causeway to Sanibel Island was washed out. Power restoration may take months. And for a time, Key Biscayne was indeed in the cone and could have had the same damage that residents of Lee County went through. Is Key Biscayne ready for a Cat 4 or a Cat 5 storm? Please explain your answer with specifics.
So we have to learn from the lessons of Sanibel and what's happened on the West Coast. And that brings us to a vulnerable place that we have, and that's Bear Cut Bridge. We need definitely an expedited process for us to get that bridge rebuilt. And we need to make sure that the one that is there will last long enough for us to be able to replace the other one. That's going to require that we go through processes. And those processes are important for us to be able to build the bridge that we want. $90 million at best buys you a flat bridge. And I don't think that's what we need. So my thinking on this is that we're going to build this bridge and it's going to last for 100 years. So it's very important that we take care of doing the right things. And so going through that planning, development, and environmental process is key. And this is one example of how we need to go about carefully to be prepared. The other thing that I would say on hurricane preparedness would be that the village has plans in place and working together with our county. That's something that is regularly done.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rebuttal. I'm sorry.
Follow-up?
Follow-up?
Yeah,
My
thanks.
apologies.
Thank you.
It's my first question. I'm getting it right.
My question, though, really was about the state of readiness. These plans to replace the Bear Cut Bridge could be a decade or more before that. In the meantime, there's the Bear Cut Bridge with the engineering reports that show it could be very risky. What is the level of readiness for an evacuation? How do you assess it of this village if that storm had come here?
Well, Tony, we've been doing this for many, many years. Everyone knows, and I've been here for 4 decades, that you evacuate. That is the principle of hurricane preparedness, is that we make sure that we tell everyone how important it is to evacuate and evacuate on time. That means that we have to make sure that we evacuate the elderly, that we evacuate those that are homebound, making sure that that's part of our plan. We have a sophisticated plan in place. That's why we have dedicated people in our emergency services, our firefighters and our police, that are definitely in tune with that, and they follow protocols that are set up extensively by Miami-Dade County also. One of the other things about preparedness that I would tell you is that we have a $4 million emergency preparedness reserve.
Thank you, candidate.
We should keep that.
Tess Risky will now ask a question about hurricane preparedness to candidate Gomez.
Here we go. So the council adopted a $37 million budget with a $4 million hurricane contingency.
Speak a little bit louder, please.
I will take this opportunity to ask members of the audience to please refrain from commenting. Thank you. Tess, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So the Village Council adopted a $37 million budget with a $4 million hurricane contingency. But 3 dissenting council members questioned the budget and the size of reserve funds for hurricanes and pressed for tax cuts. The manager, Steve Williamson, said he believed the overall reserve was too low for a village Key Biscayne's size. What is the right mix between reserves and taxes?
Thank you for the question. First of all, is we do have a $37 million budget, and the reserves is actually $26 million, not $4 million. There is a $4 million reserve for hurricane preparedness, but that does not mean that hurricane preparedness is limited to those $4 million. You can tap into the $26 million in reserves.
Follow-up question?
Nope, not now.
Thank you.
This, of course, brings us to a conversation about resilience and resiliency projects. Emily Cardenas will ask Joe Rasco a question on that.
Okay, Mr. Rasco. More than 1 million people are without power after Hurricane Ian. In Key Biscayne, thousands lost power that took hours to restore. The village is moving to restart the undergrounding project with Florida Power and Light, but the last round derailed in part over a dispute about funding. Condominium leaders took the position that owners should pay less if their buildings were already benefiting from buried power lines. And the undergrounding task force recommended an assessment formula that would have changed tax burdens, but the move led to division. Do you think undergrounding costs should be different between single-family homes and condominiums that are already undergrounded?
I do not believe that undergrounding costs should be different. The funding is something that we do in totality for the entire village. So these numbers have actually gone down considerably. So this is a very big plus for us. We will be doing the undergrounding as part also of our stormwater drainage so that we do not open our streets more than one time. So the funding is important and that we share that funding throughout the village. We don't ask that question when we have a beach renourishment issue that is very favorable also for the property owners and the condos. So by sharing and working together, we get things done, and that's the right way to do it.
Follow-up?
Yes, I'm curious, this issue of undergrounding power lines has been an issue here in Miami-Dade County since Hurricane Andrew, as I recall. And this has been going on in many parts of the county for quite some time. I'm wondering why it took Key Biscayne this long to get here.
I can't tell you why it took so long to get here, but I'm telling you that it's very important to me. It's part of our emergency preparedness, is hardening those assets, and this is one excellent way to do that. So we will be working on that right away, and again, as I said before, it's part of opening up our roads only once, and that includes putting in the necessary stormwater systems that we have, and making sure that we underground these utility lines. And those costs have been coming down. FPL is going to pick up a larger piece of it. We need to make sure that we check with all our other neighbors. I know that Coral Gables is entering into an agreement with FPL, but that delays their putting their underground cables for a longer period of time.
Thank you, candidate. Tony Winton to candidate Gomez.
Candidate Gomez, you were president of the Key Biscayne President's Council, the condominium group, and that organization has been active in pushing for condominium interests, including different rates for condominiums and single-family homes. The undergrounding issue is one that pitted, sometimes some people would say, these two groups. What is the way to get consensus in the community to move ahead with undergrounding quickly?
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Well, you've asked me that question in the past, and I've responded to it in the past. Let me respond it to you again. Number one, I'm president of the Condominium President's Council. The prior leadership of the Condominium President's Council had a different point of view than the current leadership has. We are one community, one island. Anything that benefits the condominiums benefits single-family homes, benefits single-family homes, benefits condominiums with regards to our property values. Okay? That has been the position that we've adopted from the very beginning of my presidency. It is a position that our board has adopted. We have worked in close cooperation with the village. So, that is an issue of the past. Let's talk about the present.
All right, so the question would be, just to understand, what could you do to make it happen faster? The issue here is the power outages caused a lot in Key Biscayne, more than 1,000, and there was a lot of vegetation. What can happen to make undergrounding happen faster?
Well, number one is Florida Power and Light basically has agreed to fund the laterals in the community. That's number one. Number two, however, that does not mean that everything would go underground. We also need to talk to AT&T, Comcast, and others to basically make sure that they underground as well, because it really doesn't serve us having just the power and the other things above the line. Number three, very, very, very important, we really need a strong resiliency project, not only for undergrounding, but more importantly, for the lines that are coming in to the community to make sure they're underground so we don't lose power on those lines. Number four, as I said, we believe that we're one community and everybody should pay. Number five, elect me mayor and we'll get it done.
We'll now move on to the obvious next topic, which is going to have to be budget, taxes, and debt cap. Tess Risky will ask Joe Roscoe a question.
Mr. Roscoe, one of the concerns about raising the debt cap is that we don't know the exact cost of all of these projects. You were on the panel that recommended doubling the debt cap. What will you do as mayor to make sure any spending is properly vetted?
Could you repeat that question again?
What will you do as mayor to make sure any spending is properly vetted? Do you want me to read the?
So we have major projects, major capital improvements to make. And the village deserves maximum flexibility to do so. We're a world-class community that requires world-class investments. Because we have the capacity doesn't mean that we have to use it. It's kind of like getting a larger limit on your credit card. Just because you get that larger credit limit doesn't mean you have to spend it. And so each project will be looked at. Each project then has to secure its financing. So there are plenty of checks and balances along the way so that everyone can have input into the process and there be complete transparency in this so that everyone is aware of what's going on as we make these infrastructure investments.
Follow up?
So are you proposing any changes to the current system, or are you saying that already the systems in place will be effective at vetting this sort of spending?
I think that the systems are in place. We have to, on every major capital project, we have to send out information to the taxpayers, alerting them that investment is going to be made. And then we also have hearings and hold it, and we must secure the debt. In order to secure the debt, you have to have a supermajority vote. So there are very much in place ways that we can control and watch what we're doing.
Thank you. Emily Cardenas to candidate Gomez. Same subject matter.
Sure. Mr. Gomez, you're on the record as being currently opposed to raising the debt cap, but with a caveat saying that if the cost of projects could be properly estimated, that you would then consider raising the debt cap. Knowing that the village's ability to borrow money is currently limited to a number far below what is estimated for resilience and infrastructure projects, and seeing the destruction wrought on places like Sanibel and Captiva Islands, Fort Myers Beach, and other communities on the West Coast, has your opinion on raising the debt cap today changed?
So my position is I believe raising the debt cap is premature. And it is premature.
So that has not changed?
It's not changed. And it is premature for various reasons. Number one is there are three projects that I think are crucial to this community: undergrounding, flooding, and beach renourishment. Okay? We don't have precise numbers of what that cost is going to be. Okay? Frankly, let's take a look at the first quote-unquote resiliency project, which is the K8. Okay? According to ACOM, which did a report for the village, it's $250 million for flooding. It's probably another $60 million for undergrounding. Okay? Now, if you take it by parcels, which I think the manager is looking at 8 parcels, you're talking about approximately $30 million. However, the interesting thing here is this. We have issued, as a village, a contract to a consulting firm to cost estimate what is the actual cost of the first project, which is a K8 project. So we don't even know what that is. I think it's a lack of respect to the taxpayers and to the citizens to start doubling debt cap when we really don't know whether it's going to be sufficient or not sufficient. Let's basically do an analysis. Let's see what we need, and then let's go to the voters of Key Biscayne and say, this is what it's going to cost for us to preserve our island. I'm sure the voters at that moment will agree if there is the necessary groundwork done.
Thank you. Follow up?
Knowing that your debt cap limit right now is far below what many people believe is really what you need to be having, why wouldn't it make sense to raise it so that you have it available to you? It doesn't mean that you have, like your opponent has said, doesn't mean that you have to spend it, but it's there. If you don't raise the debt limit and you do all these assessments, you've now wasted time. Now you have to go get that debt limit raised, and a significant period of time has passed, and you've wasted valuable time. So how do you really, account for that?
Thank you for that encyclopedic question. So let's...
You're here to debate each other, not the panelists. Thank you.
I'm sorry? All right. So here's the issue. We passed a $100 million bond issue 2 years ago, which I voted for. Okay, that money has not been used. Our debt cap now organically has grown essentially, our value has grown to $90 million. If we raise the debt cap to 2%, it raises it to $180 million. Plus, we already have $100 million sitting on the table. Okay? I prefer to have a staggered, measured approach to debt and finances. I am very much a fiscal conservative. I know how to invest, and I think we also need to curtail our spending and invest in our spending. I don't like to put the horse before the cart. Let's know exactly what we're doing, what is the cost, what are the projects, and then let's figure out how much we need, and then we go to the voters of Key Biscayne with full transparency. What really, I think the issue is...
Time.
Go ahead.
Thank you, candidate. Audience, we've reached the halfway part of this debate. I will remind you to please keep your crosstalk to a minimum so as not to distract your favorite candidate. And we will move on to, well, it's improbable that I'm going to say that this is a topic on Key Biscayne, but character, campaign financing, and dark money is actually a topic on Key Biscayne. Asking candidate Rasco is Emily Cardenas, the first question.
Did we skip segment 4, Causeway and Virginia Key?
Oh, did I?
I think so.
I'll come back to it.
Okay. So we are going to character,
Yes.
finance, and dark money. Okay. First question to candidate Gomez. Yes, you said? Okay.
Roscoe.
Roscoe. Okay. Mr. Roscoe, you have a lot of campaign contributions from real estate interests. Why isn't this concerning to people who are worried about overdevelopment in Key Biscayne?
Thank you for that question. We're at a crossroads, and the village is about to take on many important projects. Our residents, my supporters, understand this, and they're motivated because of this. The stakes have never been higher. And they want a trusted leader to be able to do that. My campaign is not being financed by developers or real estate or whatever. The actual 84% of my contributors are from Key Biscayne residents and close family. That's it. There's no mystery about this. So we are doing things very transparently, and we have close family that wants to support me and supports the things that I'm fighting for on their behalf.
Follow up?
Mr. Rasco, how do you feel about the tenor and tone of this campaign?
I'm obviously disappointed about the tenor of this campaign. I wish that we wouldn't be at this juncture. It certainly is not the way that I've been in 3 other campaigns, and this has never happened before. We've never had negative ads. We've never had a situation where the tenor of the campaign has gotten where it is today. Nonetheless, we will get through this. This is Key Biscayne. We do everything very well, and I will build consensus when I'm elected mayor and work with everyone to try to improve this issue that we have in front of us. There is division across the country, as you well know, and that division is sparked by a lot of politics. We need to come together here on Key Biscayne.
Time.
Thank you. Tony Winton to Fausto Gomez.
Mr. Gomez, in a recent email, you said your opponent was, quote, stockpiling money, unquote, for interest outside Key Biscayne, and further quoting, their payoff is in billions of dollars, unquote. What evidence do you have for that assertion?
Well, let's begin from the beginning. There has never been as much money in a political campaign in Key Biscayne as now. Okay? The most money had been spent in a political campaign was 2 years ago, which was $17,000 by Council Member Kaplan. My opponent, which is his right, has raised $65,000 as of the last filing. In addition to that, there is $32,000 in a dark money political PAC that has been used against me. So essentially, I've been facing $100,000 in campaign contributions, some legal, some not legal. One of my opponent's contributors, $1,000 contributor, is being sued in another municipality currently for smearing candidates and doing exactly the same thing that's been done to me on Key Biscayne. He's a $1,000 contributor to my opponent. A lot of the interest that my opponent has received money from are development interest. And if you look at the 2040 plan, and if you look at the charter amendment that my opponent was one of the sponsors of, to take away the right of the citizens of Key Biscayne to vote on issues regarding their own neighborhood, specifically land use and zoning. And if you look at the number of development interests that have contributed to the campaign, frankly, there is no other conclusion that development interests wish to come and overdevelop our community because our right to vote is being taken away with Charter Amendment 4.
Thank you. Follow up?
The follow-up is, again, to be specific, the term you used was payoff in the billions of dollars. What evidence do you have of a payoff?
Well, listen, I will tell you this. If you look at the 2040 plan and you look at what's happening, what their proposal is for the commercial sector. Commercial sector is basically take a bulldozer from the entrance to Key Biscayne all the way to the park, tear down all the commercial properties. So I asked a question to our staff. I said, what incentives do we as a village are going to give the private property owners for tearing down their property? And you know what the response was? Oh, density. We're going to increase the density, we're going to increase floors, and then we're going to put residences on top. Those are billions of dollars in real estate development. Interestingly, those interests that have contributed to my opponent, and again, legal contributions, I'm not saying anything that is not legal, that have contributed to my opponent, are going to be involved from outside the island in doing all these real estate development deals.
Thank you. A point of moderator privilege, I get to say when I believe an attack has happened. I do not believe anything that's said has risen to the level of an attack, so I will not be providing candidate Roscoe with a rebuttal. We will be moving on to development, though, because that seems to be a natural segue at the moment. Tess Riskey will ask candidate Roscoe a question about development and other charter amendment issues.
All right. Mr. Roscoe, a previous charter amendment years ago about a hotel development requires voters to approve major changes. The Charter Review Commission you served on recommended allowing the council to make decisions with a supermajority vote. Some are worried about this, and in fact, the committee met recently with local business owners. Some wanted more safeguards. Sorry, what is your response to that?
Okay, let me start. What we need in our amendments are maximum flexibility. Governing and doing zoning by referendum is not efficient, okay? As an example, under the current charter, we cannot use our own pocket parks to improve our drainage without a referendum. This is not effective governance. There is still, even after all these safeguards that we have, there are still mechanisms in our charter that allow our residents to challenge decisions that they're not in accord with. But more importantly, I would tell you that everyone knows my love of Key Biscayne and how long that I've been here working as a volunteer. I have always and will always have the best interests of our residents and our commercial property owners. I'm opposed to increasing density. How much better can I say that? Suggesting anything else is crazy. And after I've served our community in so many ways over these number of years, everyone knows that I am not for increased density. Thank you.
Follow up?
It's a little bit different, but can you articulate your stance on developing Virginia Key?
Developing Virginia Key is something that I've fought all along. It is a place that should be a park-oriented location. One of the reasons why I fought so hard on the homeless encampment is I didn't want to have a window inside of Virginia Key that would allow for housing. That would have been a tragic thing. Luckily, the homeless situation has gone away, but it is important that we continue to be vigilant on that score. Now, this is a great park area, and this is what it should remain. And it should remain a park based on the master plan that has existed for that area since 2010. And we as the village have participated in those conversations. We can use Virginia Key as a place for playing fields, and that's something that I will work on also.
Thank you. Emily Cardenas to candidate Gomez.
So, absolutely. So, this overall charter amendment issue on the importance of voter approval is something that you campaigned on, suggesting that you're against this amendment because you believe that voters should be able to decide the future of your community rather than delegating it to the council. Delegating to the council, however, is what representative democracy is all about. So in addition to zoning, are there other government functions you believe should not be delegated and should go to the voters instead?
Well, delegation to council is based on trust. And obviously, when we had the amendment that the voters will decide on significant zoning and land use changes, and that's when the hotel was being proposed, it's because the citizens of Key Biscayne at that moment did not trust their village government. Okay? I will tell you this. We asked a question about hurricanes. Okay? Let's say Hurricane Ian comes through Key Biscayne. Frankly, many of the buildings in the Garden District will not survive. Okay? Many other properties will not survive. Now, do we want the citizens of Key Biscayne to vote and say, this is what we want our community to be and how it should be rebuilt? Or should we sort of give that to 5 members of the village council? I think the citizens of Key Biscayne want the right to decide the future of their community. I think the citizens of Biscayne have the right to opine on the future of this community. Okay? I am strongly against the amendment that takes away their right. I always defer to democracy, and democracy is unfortunately being challenged in our country, and it's certainly being challenged on Key Biscayne by taking away people's right to vote.
Follow up?
Are there any other areas outside of zoning?
The only issue that comes at the moment is the charter amendment on zoning that takes away our right to vote on significant issues in this community. Believe me, development is a significant issue. The future of our community is a significant issue. What we want our community to be is a significant issue.
Another significant issue, and our last topic of the evening, is the Causeway and Virginia Key, since it came up. Tony Winton to candidate Roscoe.
Candidate Roscoe, the Key Biscayne resident toll is currently $24 a year. We've talked about this many times in previous forums. The new Causeway is almost certainly going to mean higher tolls. What level of annual toll would you support?
Tony, to answer that question is wholly premature because we absolutely need to know what the costs are going to be. There are the projects that have to happen are the Rickenbacker Causeway rebuilding, but more importantly, as I've talked already tonight, is about the Bear Cut Bridge. And without knowing what's going to happen with the Bear Cut Bridge, one of the things I mentioned earlier is we need to go through a process, that planning, development, and environmental process. Even if we can't expedite it, it's going to take time. But it's also an opportunity for us to develop what it is that we want on that causeway. One of the things that's important to go through that process is to be eligible for federal funds. And that can lower the cost of that project, of the Bear Cut Bridge, for example. If that project is lower, then the need for our toll users to get impacted with that is going to be lessened. So in going through the process, a primary important issue that has to happen, and then we can look at what the toll situation is going to be and how to make that palatable and fair for our residents.
Follow up? Tess Risky, you may ask the last question to candidate Gomez.
All right, Mr. Gomez, both you and your opponent have said that you'll prioritize the overhaul of the Rickenbacker Causeway, and you've also said that privatization should be avoided. The experience of the Sanibel Causeway has heightened concern about speeding up this work. If privatization led by the county is the fastest path, why not pursue it?
Well, privatization led by the county is not the fastest path. I've been extremely specific with regards to the Rickenbacker Causeway and the Bear Cut Bridge. This is something that's very much in my wheelhouse. Let's look at the numbers, and unfortunately we only have 1 minute, 15 seconds left. Right now, the toll plaza generates $11 million. Replacing the Bear Cut Bridge is $90 million. Transportation funding is usually bonded at 10 to 1. So you can take $11 million bonded by 10, that's $110 million. That's enough to replace the Bear Cut Bridge today, not wait till 2030. You can do PD&E, as Joe was saying, planning, development, and environment. The fastest one was done by the Port Tunnel in Miami, and it was done basically in 18 months. We don't have to wait until 2030 to replace the Bear Cut Bridge. The money's sitting right there, right now. In addition to that, if we give the Rickenbacker Causeway to the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, which is part of Miami-Dade County, the MDX takes all the toll revenues from around the community, bonds them, and then uses them for various projects. So we can basically benefit from the toll plate in Homestead or the toll plate in North Miami for the benefit of the Rickenbacker Causeway. And in addition to that, I really don't want to be a supplicant saying, let's have a seat at the table. I want to make sure that we own part of the table. And when Miami-Dade County gives it to the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, then basically I would propose that the mayor of Key Biscayne and the mayor of the city of Miami have a seat on the board of MDX.
Candidate, follow up, Tess?
So if you were elected, what would be the timeline you would have in mind for overhauling the Rickenbacker Causeway?
Immediately, I would go to the county. Immediately, I would ask them to effectuate what they discussed in 1994 when they created MDX, which was putting the Rickenbacker Causeway under MDX. Okay? Moving it to MDX, I know MDX wants the causeway. Number one, I know that our manager met with the former executive director of MDX to see if this was feasible, and he was told precisely this is very feasible. Okay? So immediately to do that, immediately try to amend the board of MDX to include the mayors of Miami and the mayors of Key Biscayne. Have the PD&E done, probably just like the Port Tunnel in 18 months, and then the money would be there to construct a Burkhardt Bridge and to do the enhancements to the Rickenbacker without it being private. I think the Rickenbacker Causeway needs to remain in public hands in perpetuity. It is the driveway to our homes. I don't know anybody whose driveway is in private hands.
Thank you. Candidates, I'd like to thank you for your answers tonight. You have been fantastic. Audience, thank you very much. We will move now to the closing statements. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds, starting with candidate Rasko.
Before I go into my close, I certainly want to thank our hosts, Crossbridge Church, the Key Biscayne Community Foundation, and the KB Independent. I also want to thank you, our audience that's here tonight, and those also that are tuning in because they have a strong interest in our local government. And this is the hallmark of our democracy. This election is about our future. And in me, you will have someone who listens, someone who can build consensus, someone who looks for the common good, someone who wants our village and families to thrive. We are blessed to live in this island paradise, and our village deserves a trusted and ethical leader to guide us into the future. I respectfully ask for your vote on November 8th, and thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you. Candidate Gomez.
Yeah. Thank you, Key Biscayne, and thank you for the audience here, and certainly thank you for the panelists for the questions. So, my name is Fausto Gomez. I humbly ask for your support to be mayor. You've seen the differences. I am precise, to the point, give concrete answers to the problems that we face. That's who I am. Precise, to the point, give concrete answers. I know what I am doing. I am results-oriented and focused on the challenges that we face, whether it's the Rickenbacker Causeway, whether, frankly, it is overdevelopment, whether it's the amount of money in this campaign, which is ungodly. Okay. So those are issues that we face. Those are challenges that we face. I deal with them. I've been trusted by the leaders of the state of Florida from being called, favorite son of the state of Florida by a governor to serving on the board, invited to serve on the board of Florida Tax Watch and Leadership Florida. Okay? With regards to, listen, let me address an issue here. Some people say that I'm sort of a little bit too aggressive. No, I am passionate about our community and the challenges and how we can address them precisely, correctly, and get it done. I look forward to being your mayor with your support. I humbly ask for it. And I want to thank Joe for being up here and giving us this opportunity so we can have an exchange of views. Thank you, Keep It
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, candidates. Thank you to our sponsors. I would be remiss without thanking the Ritz-Carlton for loaning us the podiums. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your candidates. Please vote wisely. It is 6:43.